Hi friends, today we're going to be doing Unit 9, Lesson 2, 1492, A Year That Changed the World. We're going to start by going over the key vocabulary words you'll be hearing in today's reading. Our first word is enterprise, a plan or project that is often risky or difficult to carry out. Our next word is fleet, a group of ships, planes, trucks, or other vehicles that are controlled by a single person, company, or government. Our next word is sphere, an object shaped like a ball. Our next word is sponsors, people who pay for the cost of an activity or event. And our last word is uncharted, explored or unknown. We are now going to move into today's reading. Do any of you know what important event in world history took place in the year 1492? It is said that in this year, the explorer Christopher Columbus discovered several islands off the coast of North and South America, in what is now known as the Caribbean Sea. Here's a little rhyme that you can use to help you remember when Columbus set off on his important voyage. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Columbus and other Europeans had known nothing about these islands prior to his voyage. Sometimes people say that Columbus discovered the Americas. But did he truly discover something new? Columbus was actually looking for a different part of the world. Does anyone know what land Columbus was trying to reach? Christopher Columbus was trying to sail a part of Asia known at that time as the Indies. When Christopher Columbus and other Europeans at that time talked about the Indies, they were thinking about a part of the continent of Asia known today as India, as well as many surrounding islands. He wanted to sail to the area known as the Indies because he had heard and read that they were wealthy lands full of gold and spices. What Columbus actually ended up finding is an area now referred to as the Caribbean Islands or the West Indies. Even though Columbus was sure he had reached parts of Asia we now call the East Indies are the parts of Asia that lay south of China and north of Australia. They include the present-day nations of India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, as well as some other parts of Asia. Spices like pepper, cinnamon, and cloves were grown in the East Indies. They were carried to other parts of the world by spice traders. The spice traders transported spices to Europe by going through the Middle East. It was a long and dangerous journey. The traders had to load the spices onto pack animals like donkeys or two camels and then lead these animals across deserts and mountains along dangerous roads where the traders might be robbed or killed. In the 1400s, Europeans were looking for a better way to get to the spice-producing lands known as the Spice Lands in the area they called the Indies. They figured if they could find a way to sail there, they could fill their ships with spices, sail home, sell the spices, and get rich. The possibility of getting rich, as well as becoming famous for finding new routes and discoveries, inspired a lot of people to take risks and explore uncharted land and water. Uncharted land and water are areas that have not been charted or mapped out yet. Christopher Columbus was only one of many men thinking about the Indies and the money that could be made if one could find a way to sail there. Columbus was born in the city of Genoa, Italy. In Italy, he was known as Cristoforo Colombo. As a young man, he had worked as a sailor and a map maker. He had sailed all around the Mediterranean Sea, along the northwestern coast of Africa, and as far north as England. Columbus had also read the reports of Marco Polo, an Italian merchant who had traveled to China almost 200 years earlier. Columbus knew that the earth was a sphere, or shaped like a ball. Most educated men of his day knew this. However, there were lots of disagreements about how big the earth was. Most people thought the earth was pretty big, but a few skeptics thought it was not all that big. Columbus was one of the skeptics. He thought the earth was a lot smaller than most people thought, and that led him to propose his enterprise of the Indies. Everyone knew that the Indies were on the other side of the world, but Columbus thought the earth was small, so the other side might not be far away. It might even be possible to get there by sailing around the world to the west. That was Christopher Columbus's bold idea that he proposed. Unfortunately, there were two big problems with Columbus's idea. The first problem was that Columbus was wrong about the size of the Earth. The Earth is actually much larger than he thought, and that meant that the East Indies are much farther away from Europe than he realized. The second problem was that there is something besides ocean between Europe and Asia. There is a large block of land, the Americas. So here you see in the map between Europe and Asia is North America, but Columbus thought this was one straight shot. Columbus convinced the King and Queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella, to be his sponsors, funding his voyage of sailing west to find the East Indies. Columbus set sail in August of 1492 with 3 ships. Does anyone remember the names of the ships in his fleet? That's right, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Columbus sailed west for 5 weeks. After a while, the sailors started to get worried and scared about how far they had sailed. Nobody had ever sailed so far west from Europe. Then one day a sailor sighted land. Columbus became excited. He thought he had reached Asia and the East Indies. In fact, he landed on one of the islands in the Bahamas off the coast of North America. Columbus and his men explored the island. They staked a flag and claimed the island for the King and Queen of Spain. They made contact with the Native Americans who lived there, the Taino. Columbus called these people Indians because he thought he had sailed to an island in or near the East Indies. The native people Columbus met were peaceful and friendly. They traveled with the Europeans. Columbus and his men gave the native people beads and bells. These items were considered cheap to Europeans, but the natives had long valued trade goods from distant places. In return, the native people gave the Spaniards food, fresh water, and colorful parrots. They each gave the other something that was plentiful on their continent but rare on the other. A few of the natives had golden earrings or nose rings. Columbus and his men tried to find out where the gold came from. The Taino and the Spaniards made signs and gestures to communicate because they did not speak the same language. The Taino pointed to other islands. Long before Columbus arrived in the West Indies, trade occurred regularly between the people of the different islands. Their gestures were hard to understand, but the Spaniards thought the native people were saying that there were places not so far away where gold could be found. Columbus sailed off looking for islands of gold and spices. He visited several islands in the Caribbean Sea. On December 6, 1492, he began exploring a big island he decided to name La Isla Hispaniola, or the Island of Spain, for the land from where he had sailed. 2 weeks later, on Christmas Day, the Santa Maria got stuck on a rock off the coast of Hispaniola. Columbus could not get the ship afloat, so he told his men to use the wooden supplies from the ship to build a fort on Hispaniola. 39 men volunteered to stay behind at the fort when the time came for Columbus to sail back to Spain to report his findings to the King and Queen. On his return voyage to Spain, Columbus took some of the native people on board as prisoners to show proof to the King and Queen that he had really reached the Indies. On the way back across the Atlantic, Columbus wrote a report for the King and Queen. He described having discovered and claimed several islands in honor of Spain. Once he arrived in Spain, Columbus presented Ferdinand and Isabella with the natives and shared many facts about the islands he had discovered. But Columbus also exaggerated. He called the island of Hispaniola a miracle, describing it like heaven on earth. He said it had good harbors, rich soil, lots of spices, and rivers full of gold. Columbus boasted that the other islands he had visited were full of spices, but really he and his crew were unfamiliar with the exotic plants and trees that produce spices. Columbus more boldly exaggerated when it came to gold. He told the King and Queen that Hispaniola was absolutely full of gold. He said there was gold in the rivers, gold in the fields, gold in vast mines, gold just waiting to be claimed. Columbus did not want to tell the King and Queen only about the few natives wearing gold earrings and the few flakes in the rivers of Hispaniola that he believed were gold. Columbus reported all this in hopes of convincing the King and Queen to sponsor another voyage to what he thought were the islands just off the coast of China. As you have heard, Columbus had read books by Marco Polo and other merchants who described China and the area known as the Indies as wealthy areas with flourishing trade. Columbus combined what he had read with what he had seen in the place he believed to be the East Indies and concluded that there had to be more riches waiting to be discovered. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were so pleased by his findings that they decided to fund another voyage. You may now move on to Unit 9, Lesson 2, Google Form.